So we are going to have a look at setting up the demo device that we're going to use for this onboarding tutorial. The code for this demo device is available at GitHub. You will find it at github.com, application platform for IoT, demo lightweight M2M client. Now this client is based on Leshen, so if you're familiar with Leshen, this should be pretty straightforward. You will also need the Eclipse ID to follow the tutorial. You can use any ID really, but for this tutorial we're going to use Eclipse. So the demo device, it implements a couple of smart objects. The three first here, security, server, and device, is just from the Leshen implementation, so we haven't done anything specific to those. But we have four additional smart objects for firmware update, which handles the firmware update process. We have location, which simulates location data. We have temperature, which also simulates a temperature sensor. And then we have the addressable text display. We can read and write text to the console, and we can also execute a resource for clearing the console, but in that case we just type cleared. So in order to get started with this, we need to go to GitHub and clone the project. So we go to GitHub, application platform for IoT, demo lightweight M2M client. We hit here, click or download. You copy the clone URL. There. You clone the repo, and after that you go to Eclipse and right click and then select import Maven and existing Maven project. Hit next, and then you select the folder where you clone your the repo for the demo client. In there you will find a pom.xml file. So everything is set up. We click finish. Now we can have a look at the project. Here is three packages. The first one here is where you find the application itself. In order to get all this stuff up and running, we need to do two things before we continue. First thing is that we need to define our endpoint. The endpoint is a unique identifier of the device, and if you don't have that, you can generate one online. Here, we just do a refresh of this page and we'll get a new UUID. We enter that UUID into the endpoint here. Next thing is to configure the URL to the Bootstrap server. Now this is specific for your environment, so don't use the values that I'm using. Find out the URL for your Bootstrap server, add it here, because that is environment specific. For this particular Bootstrap server, it's required that I use this UUID and put a placeholder in there before I can configure it. So let's do that first before continuing. I click add new client Bootstrap configuration and I just add my unique identifier. I'm going to use new security for bootstrapping here just to keep stuff simple. That's it. Okay, so I'm good to go for what comes to the client side. But before we continue and having a look at what we need to do in App IoT, we just have a quick look at the implementations of the smart objects here. You can see that this is the My Addressable Text Display, which is the smart object addressable text display. We have just implemented two resources for this one, the text, which is read and writable, and an executable for clearing the display. So what we do is we just write the text that you write to the smart object to the console, and if you do execute on the clear display resource, we're gonna type text that says cleared in the console, just to follow the process and see what's happening in an easy manner. This is the firmware update implementation, which implements the firmware update sequence and all of the state machines and stuff like that. It's not a complete implementation, it's something that gets you going. We will get back to this one later in the tutorial. detail of the firmware update. This is the location, which is using the a simulated GPS sensor, and the simulation is really just provided by macro.txt, which is it contains just of longitude and latitudes, which is reported by every second from the device. And then we have the my temperature, which also is a simulated sensor for temperature. It's basically just produces a sinus curve, just to get some data in and play around with in AppIoT.